Sir, the janitorial entrance is around back. The white sales manager's voice cuts through Platinum Aviation's gleaming showroom. The black man in dirt-stained overalls stops mid-stride. Every wealthy customer turns to stare. His weathered hands, the hands that built a billion-dollar empire, hang loosely at his sides. His expression reveals nothing. "I'm here to purchase a private jet," he states simply. The manager's laugh echoes off marble floors. "These start at $8 million. Perhaps you'd like a taxi instead?" Staff members snicker behind manicured hands. No one intervenes. The man reaches slowly into his pocket and pulls out a business card that makes the receptionist's eyes widen in recognition. James Washington steps onto the Italian marble floor of Platinum Aviation's exclusive showroom, his work boots leaving faint dirt traces with each confident stride. The 55-year-old agricultural tech entrepreneur adjusts his worn overalls, comfortable attire after a morning inspecting his newest farming innovation site. Today marks a milestone, purchasing his first private jet to expedite travel between his expanding global operations. Crystal chandeliers reflect against gleaming aircraft models displayed on illuminated pedestals. Wealthy customers in tailored suits converse quietly with attentive sales staff. The atmosphere exudes exclusivity and wealth. Richard Parker, the white sales manager, immediately stiffens when he spots James. His eyes narrow, calculating. Another lost delivery person. Or maybe maintenance. He straightens his designer tie, nodding to a junior salesperson while rolling his eyes. "Watch this," Richard whispers. 10 seconds before I have to direct him to the service entrance. The receptionist, Allison, greets James with a tight smile. "Can I help you find something, sir?" "Yes, I'm interested in purchasing a private jet for my company," James replies, his deep voice carrying the measured confidence of someone who knows exactly where he belongs. Allison's eyebrows rise slightly. She exchanges a glance with Richard, who swoops in immediately. "Sir," Richard says, his tone dripping with condescension, "I believe you might be confused. This is Platinum Aviation. We sell private aircraft." He emphasizes each word as if speaking to a child. "Perhaps you're looking for the farm equipment dealer? That's in a different part of town." Several customers turn to watch the exchange, some with uncomfortable expressions, others smirking along with Richard's staff. James maintains perfect composure. "I'm perfectly aware of where I am. As I said, I'm interested in purchasing a jet for my agricultural technology company. I'd appreciate being shown your G650 models if you have any available." Richard's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Of course. But these are very specialized machines. Perhaps we should discuss your expectations first." James notices an expensive model display and approaches it with expert knowledge, touching the wing design specifically, remarking, "The laminar flow on this G650 looks significantly improved from last year's model." Richard slides between James and the aircraft model, his body language territorial. The sales manager straightens to his full height, looking down at James with barely concealed disdain. "You seem to know aviation terminology," Richard says, voice laced with skepticism. "Perhaps you'd care to elaborate on the G650's cruising altitude capabilities compared to the competition?" James meets his gaze steadily. The G650 maintains optimal efficiency at 51,000 feet, approximately 5,000 feet higher than most competitors. This altitude advantage reduces fuel consumption by roughly 8% over transcontinental distances while minimizing turbulence exposure. Richard blinks, momentarily thrown. He recovers quickly. "And the avionics system?" "Gulfstream's PlaneView 2 with enhanced vision systems and fly-by-wire technology. The head-up display integrates synthetic vision with infrared camera input, providing exceptional situational awareness during difficult landing conditions," James responds without hesitation. Around them, potential customers pretend not to listen while catching every word. A young Latina salesperson, Maya Rodriguez, observes from her desk, her expression increasingly uncomfortable. Richard's smile tightens. Impressive Google research, Mr. Washington. James Washington. Well, Mr. Washington, memorizing specifications is one thing. Understanding the financial realities is another. Richard's voice rises slightly, ensuring nearby customers hear. These aircraft start at $8 million. Annual maintenance runs approximately 7% of purchase price. Operational costs exceed $2,500 per hour. I'm aware of the costs, James replies calmly. Then surely you understand why we require financial pre-qualification before wasting... Richard catches himself, before investing our time with potential clients. Maya shifts uncomfortably at her desk, her eyes meeting James's briefly. Something passes between them, recognition of the situation's impropriety. I'd still like to see your G650 inventory, James says. Company policy, Richard insists, gesturing toward his office. Financial verification first, for certain clients. James notices a white couple being shown aircraft models without such requirements. He studies Richard for a moment, expression unreadable. Is that policy applied to all potential buyers? James asks quietly. Of course, Richard lies smoothly. Security protocols. I'm sure you understand. If financial verification is required, perhaps I should speak with the owner of Platinum Aviation instead, James says quietly, pulling out his phone. Charles and I were just discussing jets over dinner last night. Richard's laugh echoes through the showroom, sharp, dismissive, and performative. Customers turn to watch the confrontation unfold. Charles Whitman? You had dinner with Charles Whitman? Richard's voice drips with mockery. Our CEO doesn't typically dine with walk-ins off the street. James's expression remains neutral, though something flickers in his eyes, a momentary glimpse of resolved calculation. Let's not waste more time, Richard continues. Company policy requires financial verification for unusual clients. He emphasizes the word while pointedly looking at James's overalls. Just protecting the company from non-serious inquiries. Richard gestures dramatically toward his office. After you. He deliberately leads James through the center of the showroom rather than taking the shorter route along the perimeter. Potential customers watch their procession, the immaculately dressed sales manager and the black man in farmer's clothes. Richard walks a half step ahead, speaking just loudly enough to ensure others hear. We appreciate your interest but must be thorough with walk-ins. Our time is valuable, and we cater to legitimate buyers only. Maya Rodriguez watches from her desk, knuckles whitening as she grips her pen. Another salesperson catches her eye and shrugs as if to say, "What can you do?" In Richard's glass-walled office, James sits calmly while Richard remains standing, maintaining the power dynamic. I'll need to see bank statements and identification, Richard says, not bothering to mask his condescension. Private aviation isn't like buying a pickup truck. The operating costs alone exceed what most people earn annually. James begins to speak, but Richard talks over him. Maintenance, hangar fees, pilot salaries. These costs surprise people who don't typically move in these circles. Richard's smile is all teeth. We've had individuals waste our time before, pretending to be what they're not. James silently produces his driver's license. Richard glances at it without truly registering the details. And proof of funds? Unless you'd prefer I call security now. Their office is just down the hall. Through the glass walls, other customers and employees watch the scene unfold. Maya shifts uncomfortably at her desk, glancing repeatedly at the confrontation before looking away. James stares at Richard for a long moment. His expression reveals nothing, but his eyes hold a depth of feeling. Hurt mixed with something harder, more resolute. He reaches for his phone, tapping the banking app with deliberate movements. I'm not in the habit of displaying my financial information to strangers, James says quietly, especially ones who've shown such disrespect. Disrespect? Richard places a hand on his chest in mock offense. I'm simply doing my job. If you find standard procedures offensive, Perhaps this isn't the right establishment for you. James unlocks his phone, his weathered farmer's hands steady despite the humiliation. As James is about to show his bank account, his phone rings. The display reads, Governor Williams, with the state seal clearly visible. James glances at the incoming call, then back at Richard. "Excuse me, I need to take this." Richard sighs dramatically, rolling his eyes toward the ceiling. "Of course. We wouldn't want you to miss an important call from the governor." His sarcasm hangs in the air as James steps outside the office. In the showroom, Richard makes a show of checking his watch. He leans toward a colleague passing by. "Another time waster. Probably calling his buddy to pretend it's someone important." The colleague chuckles obligingly. Neither notices Maya shifting her phone on her desk, its camera lens pointed directly at them. In a quiet corner near the window display of aircraft models, James speaks with measured respect. "Yes, Governor Williams. The agricultural technology bill is progressing well. The sustainability amendments we discussed are being incorporated." He listens intently, his gaze drifting across the showroom to where Richard continues performing for his colleagues, mimicking James's stance with exaggerated movements. "I understand completely. I'll have the reports on your desk by tomorrow." James pauses. "Actually, Governor, I may need to call you back about another matter, something that requires attention." James ends the call, his expression transforming. The patience in his eyes hardens into resolve. He's made a decision. He texts someone named Marcus. "Plan B at Platinum Aviation, documenting everything." The reply comes instantly. "On it, team standing by." At the sales counter, Richard's voice carries. "These people come in thinking they can waste our time. Doesn't even own a decent pair of shoes, but wants to look at multi-million-dollar aircraft." "Maybe he's just—" Maya begins. "Just what?" Richard cuts her off. "Just confused? Just delusional? Just looking where he doesn't belong?" His emphasis leaves little doubt about his meaning. Maya's phone continues recording discreetly as her expression hardens with quiet determination. James returns to Richard's office, his demeanor subtly changed. His shoulders are straighter, his gaze more penetrating. "I'd prefer to have your financial compliance officer handle my sensitive information," James states. "Standard privacy practice when dealing with accounts of my size." Richard's laugh is sharp. "Our compliance officer? For your accounts?" He makes air quotes with his fingers. "Fine. We'll play it your way before we conclude this charade." He calls across the showroom. "Diane, need you for a verification." A middle-aged woman in a conservative suit approaches, her expression professionally neutral. "How can I help?" "Our friend here wants to share his financial information with compliance rather than sales," Richard explains with exaggerated patience. "Company protocols and all that." Diane nods crisply. "That's actually the proper procedure for high-value transactions." Richard snorts but steps back, gesturing for them to proceed. James quietly shares his information with Diane, angling the phone away from Richard's view. The compliance officer's expression transforms as she scrolls through the screens, professional detachment giving way to surprise, then unmistakable deference. Diane whispers something to Richard, whose smug expression freezes. "There must be some mistake," he mutters, grabbing the tablet to verify the information himself. Richard stares at the screen, blood draining from his face. The numbers don't lie. 9 figures in liquid assets alone. Multiple corporate holdings. Investment portfolios that exceed Platinum Aviation's annual revenue. He swallows hard, Adam's apple bobbing, then forces a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Well, Mr. Washington, why didn't you say so earlier?" Richard's voice shifts to an artificially warm tone. "Slight misunderstanding. Just following protocol, you understand. Now let me show you our finest jets." James observes the transformation with quiet intensity. "I believe I did say so earlier. Several times." "Communications breakdown. Happens in business, Richard replies, now standing too close, leaning in with forced camaraderie. Come, let me personally show you our premium collection. The G650 you mentioned is an excellent starting point for someone of your unexpected caliber. They move back into the showroom, Richard now walking a half step behind, his body language completely transformed. Yet something remains off in his demeanor, the insincerity of his sudden respect evident in every gesture. This model includes our Platinum interior package, Richard explains, gesturing toward a display. Though perhaps the technical specifications might be challenging to grasp without aviation background. The avionics alone represent quantum leaps in technology. James runs his fingers along the model's wing. The navigational redundancy systems appear robust. How does the synthetic vision perform in low visibility approaches? Richard blinks. Well, it's very advanced. Most clients focus on the leather options rather than technical capabilities. He laughs too loudly. Unusual to find someone in your position with such specific interests. Nearby customers watch the interaction with curiosity. The same people who had smirked earlier now observe with confused interest as Richard performs his transparent about-face. When Richard excuses himself briefly to retrieve brochures, Maya approaches James cautiously. "I want to apologize," she says quietly. "This isn't how we should treat any customer." James studies her thoughtfully. "Do you have a card, Ms. Rodriguez? Maya Rodriguez." She hands him her business card discreetly. Richard returns, catching the exchange. His smile hardens as he inserts himself between them. "I see you've met our junior associate," he says tightly. "Maya, don't you have calls to make?" After she leaves, Richard leans closer to James. "New hire. Still learning the ropes. Now about the interior options, I assume you'd prefer something simple, given your practical background." James excuses himself for another call, and we see him connecting with someone identified as legal team in his contacts, whispering, "Are you getting all this?" "Crystal clear, Dr. Washington," comes the response through James's phone. Every interaction is being documented, fascinating behavior pattern emerging. James returns to find Richard impatiently checking his watch. The sales manager's smile snaps back into place instantly. "Ready to see the actual aircraft?" Richard asks, placing a hand on James's shoulder to guide him. "The hangar is this way." James subtly shifts, causing Richard's hand to fall away. "Lead on." They walk through a secure door into a climate-controlled hangar where several gleaming private jets sit in various stages of customization. The space echoes with distant mechanical sounds. Other potential buyers tour with sales representatives at a respectful distance. Richard speaks noticeably louder than necessary. "Now these are our premium models. The specifications are quite advanced." He enunciates each word as if James might struggle with comprehension. "This one here has a range of over 7,000 miles. That means it can fly very far without stopping." A nearby couple glances over, noticing Richard's condescending tone. The woman whispers something to her husband, who frowns slightly. James remains composed, studying each aircraft with a knowledgeable eye. "What's the cabin pressure differential on this model?" Richard waves dismissively. "Technical details. Let's focus on what you'd actually appreciate. The entertainment system is very user-friendly. Even someone with limited technical background can operate it." James takes out his phone, typing brief notes. Richard notices and misinterprets. "Taking pictures isn't allowed in the hangar," he says sharply, then catches himself. "Although for you, we might make an exception." His smile stretches thin. "Just be mindful of what you share. These designs are proprietary." "I'm not taking pictures," James replies. "Just noting questions for my aviation consultant." "Consultant?" Richard's eyebrows rise. "I assure you I can answer any questions. No need for outside opinions that might complicate matters." They approach a sleek G650 with distinctive winglets. James walks around it methodically, examining specific features with expert precision. "This one interests me," he says. "What's the delivery timeline?" Richard immediately steps between James and the aircraft. This particular model is actually quite advanced, probably too sophisticated for a first-time buyer. The systems require significant aviation knowledge. He gestures toward an older, less expensive model nearby. "This one might be more appropriate for your needs." "And why is that?" James asks, his tone deliberately neutral. "Just thinking practically," Richard responds with a tight smile. "Better to start with something manageable. Someone in your position, coming from agricultural backgrounds, might appreciate something more straightforward." Throughout this exchange, James continues typing occasional notes, his expression unreadable. He asks pointed questions that highlight Richard's assumptions. "Would you recommend the same starter aircraft to all new buyers with similar financial qualifications?" Richard shifts uncomfortably. "Each recommendation is personalized, of course." "Based on what factors exactly?" James presses. "Experience? Background? Fit?" Richard's answers grow shorter, more defensive. A well-dressed woman enters the hangar and does a double-take upon seeing James. "Dr. Washington? Is that you?" she calls out, walking briskly toward them. The elegant woman approaches with genuine warmth, her heels clicking purposefully across the polished hangar floor. Her tailored business suit and confident bearing mark her as someone accustomed to professional respect. "Dr. Washington, what a delightful surprise," she says, extending her hand. "I didn't expect to see you here." James smiles, his first genuine smile since entering Platinum Aviation. "Dr. Chen, good to see you." Richard watches this interaction with visible confusion, his eyes darting between them. His practiced smile falters, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "Your TED Talk last month on sustainable vertical farming technology was brilliant," Dr. Chen continues. "The integration of AI into crop yield prediction is revolutionizing food security models worldwide." "Thank you, Elizabeth. We're seeing promising results in the pilot programs across drought-affected regions," James responds. Richard clears his throat loudly. "Excuse me, I don't believe we've met." He extends his hand toward Dr. Chen. "Richard Parker, Senior Sales Manager." "Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Agricultural Sciences Chair at MIT," she replies, shaking his hand briefly before turning back to James. "The billion-dollar valuation after your last funding round was well-deserved. Your technologies are scaling even faster than projected." Richard's expression transforms dramatically with each revelation. The color drains from his face, replaced by a sickly pallor. "Dr. Washington," Richard says, emphasizing the title he'd ignored earlier, "you never mentioned your credentials." James turns to him with measured calmness. "You never asked about my background, Mr. Parker. You made assumptions." Dr. Chen's gaze sharpens as she picks up on the dynamic. James often has this effect on people. They see the work clothes and miss the brilliant mind behind agritech innovations. She smiles knowingly. It's remarkable how quickly perceptions change when people learn who they're really speaking with. Richard attempts damage control, his words tumbling out. "There's been a misunderstanding. Our standard protocol for all clients. Your behavior has been quite consistent until approximately 2 minutes ago," James observes. "Interesting how additional information suddenly improves customer service quality." Around them, other customers and employees have paused their activities, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Maya stands near a display case, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and vindication. Richard forces a laugh that sounds more like a wheeze. "Dr. Washington, perhaps we should restart our consultation. I'd be honored to personally ensure you receive our premium service package reserved for our most distinguished clients." That won't be necessary, James replies, his tone measured. I've seen enough to make informed decisions. Richard's smile freezes in place, panic flashing behind his eyes. About the aircraft selection? I'd be happy to show you additional models that better suit someone of your stature. About more than just aircraft, James says quietly. As Richard fumbles to recover, James's phone rings again. The caller ID reads, Charles Whitman, Platinum Aviation CEO. James studies the caller ID for a moment, then answers, activating the speakerphone function. Charles, good timing. James, sorry I couldn't be there personally. The voice is clear, confident, filling the hangar space. Is everything being handled to your satisfaction? You're one of our most valued potential clients. Richard's face drains of all remaining color. His Adam's apple bobs as he swallows hard, eyes darting between James and the phone. It's been an educational experience, James replies, his gaze fixed on Richard. There have been some interesting challenges. A heavy silence falls across the hangar. Other sales representatives freeze in place. Customers stop their conversations, turning to witness the unfolding scene. Challenges? Charles's voice sharpens. What kind of challenges? Who's assisting you? Your senior sales manager, Richard Parker. A pause. I see. Richard has been with us for some time. I trust he's providing exemplary service. That depends, James says calmly, on what type of customer he perceives he's dealing with. Dr. Chen stands nearby, arms crossed, watching Richard with clinical interest. Maya has edged closer, clutching a tablet to her chest, her expression resolute. James straightens, his presence expanding to fill the space. The moment has arrived. Perhaps this is a good time for proper introductions. I am Dr. James Washington, CEO of Agritech Innovations. His voice carries effortlessly through the hangar. My company has revolutionized sustainable farming technologies across 3 continents. We currently hold patents on 17 breakthrough agricultural systems, employ over 5,000 people globally, and maintain a market valuation exceeding $3 billion. Richard's mouth opens, but no sound emerges. I serve on the boards of multiple Fortune 500 companies, James continues, advised 2 governmental agricultural initiatives, and was recently appointed to the United Nations Food Security Council. Through the phone, Charles remains silent, listening. But more relevant to today's interaction, James says, his gaze intensifying, I'm also heading an investment consortium actively seeking to acquire aviation companies for portfolio diversification. Platinum Aviation was on our short list. The word "was" lands like a thunderclap. I chose to visit anonymously to assess not just the aircraft quality, but the company culture and customer service standards. James glances around the hangar. I believe in seeing organizations as they truly operate, not as they perform when expecting scrutiny. Richard attempts to speak, his voice emerging as a croak. Dr. Washington, had I known... That's precisely the point, Mr. Parker. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with basic dignity and respect. Through the speakerphone, Charles clears his throat. James, I owe you an apology. This is exactly why I asked you to visit incognito. We've had concerning reports about inconsistent customer treatment. I needed an objective assessment from someone I trust. Richard's expression transforms to betrayal. Sir, you set this up? Not as a trap, Richard, Charles replies evenly. As an opportunity to either confirm or refute troubling patterns we've been hearing about. Unfortunately, it seems the concerns were justified. Maya steps forward, tablet in hand. Mr. Whitman, I can provide documentation of similar incidents. Her voice trembles slightly but grows stronger with each word. This isn't an isolated occurrence. Several other employees nod in grim confirmation. Customers watch with rapt attention, some recording discreetly on their phones. I see, Charles says. James, What would you recommend as next steps? James studies Richard, whose facade has completely crumbled. The sales manager stands rigid, eyes darting, a man watching his career disintegrate in real time. I believe in accountability, Charles, James says finally, but also in transformative opportunity. What happens next shouldn't just address individual behavior, but examine the systems that enabled it. He turns to face Richard directly. The problem isn't just your actions today. It's that you felt comfortable enough to behave this way repeatedly, suggesting a culture that tacitly permits such conduct. Now, James says calmly, turning to face Richard directly, I think we need to have a conversation about the future, both yours and Platinum Aviation's. The Platinum Aviation executive boardroom buzzes with tense energy. Dark wood paneling and aviation memorabilia create a backdrop for the impromptu crisis meeting now underway. 12 people sit around the polished table: James, Platinum's executive team, legal representatives from both companies, Maya, and 2 other employees who've stepped forward. Richard sits alone at one end, a visible gap between him and everyone else. Charles Whitman's face fills a large screen on the wall, his expression grave. Let's be clear about why we're here. This isn't just about one interaction. We're addressing what appears to be a systemic issue. The company's chief legal officer, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, slides a folder across the table. These are previous complaints filed against Mr. Parker over the past 18 months. 7 formal incidents involving customers of color or women. Plus numerous undocumented incidents, adds Maya, voice steady despite Richard's glare. Many employees stopped reporting them because no action was ever taken. James remains silent, watching. His legal representative, Marcus Jefferson, reviews the documents with methodical precision. And how were these complaints handled? Charles asks through the video feed. The CLO shifts uncomfortably. They were addressed through our standard HR protocols. Which means, James inquires, breaking his silence, verbal warnings, documentation, sensitivity training. Richard straightens in his chair. I've complied with every requirement. This is being blown completely out of proportion. Is it? Marcus taps on his tablet, and security footage begins playing on a secondary screen. The morning's interactions unfold from multiple angles. Richard's dismissive gestures, the public humiliation attempts, the stark contrast in his behavior before and after learning James's identity. The footage transitions to audio recordings, Richard's comments about these people and knowing their place. His voice, unmistakable, echoes through the boardroom. Platinum's vice president of operations winces visibly. Jesus, Richard. Context matters, Richard protests, voice rising. You're not seeing the full picture. This was a misunderstanding. Dr. Washington's appearance was legitimately suspicious for our high-security environment. My appearance, James repeats quietly. The clothes, the dirt. Anyone would have questioned. Anyone? James interrupts. Or just black men in work clothes? Richard falls silent, his expression hardening. Marcus places a document on the table. We've compiled evidence demonstrating clear patterns of discriminatory treatment. Security footage shows white customers in casual attire receiving substantially different treatment than customers of color in identical circumstances. Maya steps forward. I've witnessed Mr. Parker steering customers of color toward less expensive models regardless of their financial qualifications. She places her phone on the table. I've documented 17 specific incidents in the 3 months I've worked here. Another employee, an older black man from accounting, speaks up. This extends beyond customer interactions. Internal advancement opportunities, performance evaluations, even casual interactions in break rooms follow the same patterns. Richard's attorney interjects. My client has an exemplary sales record. These allegations are subjective interpretations of normal business judgments. James leans forward. Let me outline the situation clearly. You have two paths forward. He places two folders on the table. Option 1. We pursue this matter publicly through legal channels. I have the resources, evidence, and determination to see that through to its conclusion. The resulting publicity would significantly impact Platinum Aviation's reputation and valuation. The executives exchange alarmed glances. Option 2, James continues, opening the second folder. Comprehensive structural reform with my guidance as a new major stakeholder. This includes leadership accountability, policy overhauls, training programs with measurable outcomes, and transparent reporting mechanisms. Charles speaks from the screen. I believe option 2 serves everyone's interests, including those who've been harmed by our failures. The boardroom divides visibly, some executives nodding in agreement, others defensive and resistant. This is capitulation to political correctness, one vice president argues. We can't upend company culture based on subjective perceptions. Perception becomes reality in the marketplace, James counters. But this isn't about perception. It's about documented patterns of discriminatory behavior that harm your business performance. He stands, activating a presentation on his tablet. Charts and graphs appear on the main screen. These are metrics from companies across multiple sectors. Those with inclusive practices consistently outperform their peers by significant margins. This isn't social activism. It's sound business strategy. Richard scoffs. So we're supposed to apologize for maintaining standards? Dr. Washington was being oversensitive. His appearance was legitimately suspicious. The room falls silent. Even Richard's attorney winces. Thank you for that clarification, Marcus says quietly, making a note. The record will reflect your statement. Maya presents her own evidence. Screenshots, recordings, documented patterns showing Richard's behavior represents a broader cultural problem within the company. Let me be clear, Charles says from the screen. I support Dr. Washington's assessment and proposal. This company will implement comprehensive reforms. The only question is whether certain individuals will be part of that future. Richard stands abruptly. This is a witch hunt. I've generated millions in sales for this company. You're throwing me under the bus to appease. That's enough, Richard, Charles interrupts. Your employment status will be determined through appropriate procedures. For now, you're suspended pending the outcome of those proceedings. The meeting shifts to drafting the reform agreement. James outlines concrete steps, revised hiring practices, customer service protocols, accountability mechanisms, and regular audits by independent evaluators. As for my personal business, James says as the meeting concludes, I still intend to purchase an aircraft. And yes, I'm still considering an investment in Platinum Aviation, contingent upon these reforms being implemented with full commitment. He turns to Maya. I believe you'd be an excellent person to assist with my purchase, Ms. Rodriguez. Richard watches from the corner, his expression dark as the power dynamics he's taken for granted shift irrevocably before his eyes. As the executives file out, James makes one more call. CNN Business? I'd like to discuss an exclusive story about corporate accountability and racial bias in luxury. Richard Parker sits rigidly in Platinum Aviation's third-floor hearing room, facing a panel of 5 solemn evaluators. Sunlight streams through vertical blinds, casting striped shadows across the conference table. The formal termination hearing, scheduled for 9 o'clock a.m., is now in its second hour. The room's arrangement emphasizes the power imbalance. Richard and his attorney isolated on one side, the HR director, legal counsel, and 3 senior executives on the other. Behind them sits a stenographer recording every word. Wall-mounted cameras capture the proceedings from multiple angles. Let's review the evidence again, states Caroline Wu, HR director, her voice dispassionately professional. Security footage from 7 separate incidents demonstrates a clear pattern of differential treatment based on customers' perceived race and socioeconomic status. Richard's attorney, a nervous man with thinning hair, attempts to redirect. My client has 22 years of exemplary sales performance. This isolated incident with Dr. Washington has been misinterpreted as representing a broader pattern. Isolated? Caroline raises an eyebrow, sliding forward a thick folder. We have documented complaints spanning 5 years. Testimonials from 17 current and former employees. Customer feedback surveys showing statistically significant disparities in satisfaction ratings along racial lines. The attorney adjusts his tie. Context matters. Sales is a relationship business. Different approaches for different customers represent adaptability, not discrimination. Maya Rodriguez enters with a tablet, her testimony scheduled next. Richard glares at her, but she meets his gaze steadily before taking her seat. The video evidence speaks for itself, Caroline continues, activating a screen that displays side-by-side footage. Here we see Mr. Parker's approach to similarly qualified customers on the same day. Note the stark differences in language, personal space, and assumption of financial capability. Richard shifts uncomfortably as his own voice plays through the speakers. These people need to understand there are places they belong and places they don't. That statement lacks context, his attorney protests weakly. Maya presents her documentation, dates, times, specific interactions, her voice steady despite Richard's intimidating stare. This wasn't occasional or accidental. It was systematic. Mr. Parker trained new sales staff to profile customers based on appearance, explicitly advising different treatment protocols. Other employees testify to similar experiences, both as witnesses and recipients of Richard's discrimination. The evidence mounts, becoming irrefutable. Richard's composure finally cracks. This is ridiculous. Of course we treat people differently based on how they present themselves. That's just common sense in luxury sales. If someone walks in looking like they can't afford our products, we don't waste time. His attorney winces, touching Richard's arm in warning, but Richard shakes him off. Washington was dressed like a field hand. Am I supposed to ignore that? Pretend I don't see what's right in front of me? This whole charade is about appeasing a wealthy client, not actual wrongdoing. The room falls silent. Caroline makes a note, her expression unchanged. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Parker. The panel deliberates for less than 30 minutes. Their unanimous decision surprises no one. Termination with cause, immediate effect. Additionally, all evidence will be provided to the National Business Aviation Association's Ethics Committee, potentially restricting Richard's future employment throughout the industry. Richard stands in Platinum Aviation's lobby one final time, clutching a cardboard box of personal belongings. His security badge has been deactivated. His company phone surrendered. 22 years erased in a morning. Through the glass doors, he watches a black luxury sedan pull up. James Washington steps out, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that transforms his presence from imposing to commanding. Their eyes meet briefly across the distance, James's gaze steady and untriumphant, Richard's breaking away first. A security officer approaches. Sir, I need to escort you to your vehicle now. As security escorts Richard out, a news van pulls up. The CNN business reporter James contacted steps out, microphone in hand. 3 weeks after the incident, a CNN business headline fills the screen. Platinum Aviation announces groundbreaking diversity initiative following discrimination case. The article features a photograph of James Washington and Charles Whitman shaking hands in front of a G650 jet, both men looking directly into the camera with determined expressions. Inside Platinum Aviation's transformed showroom, digital displays showcase the company's new inclusive customer service pledge. Maya Rodriguez, now wearing an Assistant Director of Diversity Compliance badge, leads a training session for sales staff. Her presentation slides display concrete metrics and accountability standards rather than vague platitudes about respect. The behavioral assessment tools measure actual treatment patterns, not just stated intentions, Maya explains to the attentive group. Our customer feedback now includes demographic data analysis to identify disparities. What gets measured gets changed. At an industry conference in Dallas, James takes the podium, presenting data on the business impact of inclusive customer service in luxury markets. His slides show Platinum Aviation sales increasing 12% since implementing comprehensive reforms. Bias isn't just ethically wrong, it's bad business, James states to the packed audience of aviation executives. Our research shows luxury companies lose an estimated $38 billion annually through discriminatory practices that alienate qualified buyers. Across the industry, ripples spread. A trade publication features an investigation titled, "The High Cost of Exclusivity: How Biased Practices Damage Luxury Brands." The article cites the Platinum Aviation case as a turning point, highlighting companies implementing similar reforms after witnessing Platinum's market share increase. In Platinum's Human Resources Department, previously marginalized employees now conduct interviews for senior positions. The applicant pool appears noticeably more diverse than the company's current leadership. In a sterile office building across town, Richard Parker sits across from an interviewer at a competing aviation sales firm. The interviewer glances at his tablet, then back at Richard with a neutral expression. "Your sales numbers are impressive," he says, "but I'm noticing a significant gap in your employment history. Can you explain your departure from Platinum Aviation?" Richard's carefully rehearsed explanation falters under the interviewer's increasingly skeptical expression. The interview ends prematurely with mechanical handshakes and empty promises to be in touch. This scene repeats across different companies with increasing desperation evident in Richard's demeanor each time. Meanwhile, James hosts a roundtable with other CEOs from diverse backgrounds, forming the Luxury Market Inclusion Coalition. They establish certification standards for inclusive business practices that major clients and investors increasingly demand before engaging with companies. Transparency creates accountability, James tells the group. Public metrics drive meaningful change. The final scene shows James on the steps of his new private jet, purchased from Maya, preparing for departure to an agricultural technology conference. The Platinum Aviation logo gleams on the hangar behind him, now accompanied by a certification emblem for inclusive excellence. 6 months later, James receives an unexpected letter with Richard's name in the return address. James sits in his office, morning sunlight streaming through windows overlooking vast agricultural research fields. The space blends rustic and modern, reclaimed barnwood walls holding advanced agricultural patents and innovation awards. On an adjacent shelf sits a model of his G650 jet beside a framed photo of his team standing proudly before an experimental vertical farm. He examines the envelope in his weathered hands, turning it over thoughtfully before opening it with a letter knife fashioned from an antique farm tool. Richard's handwriting fills the single page, tight, controlled strokes conveying reluctant admissions rather than heartfelt contrition. Dr. Washington, the past 6 months have provided unwanted time for reflection. While I maintain that certain aspects of our interaction were misinterpreted, I acknowledge that my approach contained biases I had not previously recognized. The industry-wide changes your actions precipitated have forced many of us to reconsider established perspectives. This is not an apology seeking forgiveness or employment. Rather, it is an acknowledgement that your challenge to the system had merit, even if the execution was, in my view, excessive. Richard Parker. James studies the letter without expression, then places it in a folder labeled Documentation before returning to his work. His focus remains not on Richard's journey, but on the broader transformation underway. 1 year after the incident, James hosts a gathering at his farm. A renovated barn serves as the venue, its soaring ceilings and original beams preserved while accommodating modern amenities. Through wide windows, guests can see his private jet resting in a small hangar at the edge of the property, a symbol of his success integrated seamlessly with his agricultural roots. Maya, now Platinum Aviation's Director of Client Relations, converses with Dr. Chen near a display of Agritech's latest innovations. Corporate leaders from various industries mingle with agricultural scientists and policy experts. The gathering represents the intersection of multiple worlds James navigates effortlessly. As sunset bathes the gathering in golden light, James stands to address his guests. His work clothes, the same overalls that prompted Richard's discrimination, now serve as a deliberate reminder rather than a practical choice. Our work implementing the inclusive excellence standards across luxury sectors has exceeded projections, James states. 27 companies have completed certification. Customer satisfaction metrics show improvement across all demographics. More importantly, qualified customers previously excluded from these markets now receive equal treatment. He gestures toward Maya and several others who helped drive the changes. The transformation wasn't about exposing one person's bias, but addressing the systems that enabled and rewarded such behavior. Real change requires structural reform, not just individual correction. The gathered leaders raise their glasses in acknowledgement. Later, as guests depart, James walks alone through his experimental fields. Despite his wealth and influence, he still begins each day working alongside his research team, hands in the soil, connecting directly with the innovations transforming global agriculture. The setting sun silhouettes his figure against the horizon, a man comfortable in multiple worlds because he remains authentic in each. His jet gleams in the distance while farmland stretches around him, neither element contradicting the other but representing different facets of the same integrated life. As James watches the sunset over his farmland, his phone buzzes with a news alert about another luxury industry facing a similar reckoning. The screen transitions to a direct address format. A contemplative piano score plays softly in the background as warm lighting creates an intimate atmosphere for this final segment. The truth about bias runs deeper than most realize. What you've witnessed isn't just a compelling story, it's a reflection of experiences many face daily in venues from luxury showrooms to everyday retail interactions. Dr. Washington's experience, while fictional, mirrors countless real encounters where appearance trumps character in determining how someone is treated. Consider this. Studies show that customers of color receive differential treatment in 67% of high-end retail interactions, regardless of their actual purchasing power. This systematic exclusion costs luxury markets billions annually in lost sales, damaged reputations, and litigation. But beyond business implications lie human costs, dignity diminished, opportunities denied, and potential unrealized. The subtle trauma of repeatedly being judged not by character or capability, but by superficial characteristics beyond one's control. The Washington story illustrates how power can realign when we respond to discrimination not with matched aggression, but with strategic dignity. By documenting patterns, building alliances, and creating systemic accountability, individual incidents transform into catalysts for broader change. What unconscious biases might influence your own first impressions? How might someone's appearance, their clothing, skin color, accent, or age affect your assessment of their capabilities, intelligence, or worth? These questions deserve honest reflection from all of us. If this story of justice resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that expose truth and inspire change.
This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step to transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the next story might be yours.